The kit includes the disc, the kumihimo disc, 8 bobbins, this gorgeous little booklet, which not only will remind you of the techniques that we talk about today, but will also have some extra projects in it. You'll get some thread to finish off your project, seed beads and some magatamas, and I'll explain more about those as we move through the project. A needle, a toggle, and some jump rings to finish your bracelet, and a discount voucher for my website. So let's have a look at the project options that we've got today. So today we're doing this spike sparkle bracelet. This is the purple option. It's black and white, amethyst, or blue. Gorgeous little colours. So firstly, let's talk a bit about kumihimo. So kumihimo is a Japanese braiding technique that's been around for hundreds of years. And it's traditionally done on a wooden murray with weighted bobbins. But they've now introduced a more portable version with a foam disc. This means that you can take your project anywhere and do it anywhere. So this is what we call the table of the disc. So firstly, what I'll do is just do a very brief introduction to actually starting your project. So I'm going to start off using what we call rat's tail so that you can see it a little more easily. And then what we'll do is we'll move into the into threading on your beads. So every kumihimo project starts off the same way. You have your thread, and then you either have a thick thread and do a satin braided cord, or you use a special beading cord to thread through your beads, your seed beads. And I'll explain that further as we move further on. So today we're making what we call an 8 warp round braid. That means that you've got 8 bobbins. And when we talk about a round braid, it means you get this beautiful spiral up through your braid. So you can, you'll see that, you can see the spiral if you have a look closely. You see how it spirals through. So let's get started. 2, 4, 6, 8. So firstly, what we're going to do is, I know I'm doing it with the rat's tail, so it's easier for you to see to start off with. So we're going to gather up our 8 cords, and the way you determine how long your cord needs to be for each bobbin is that you decide on the finished length of your necklace or bracelet. And say, for example, it's 40 centimetres. And then on each bobbin, you need to have cord which is 3 times the finished length. So that needs to be 1.2 metres, 120 centimetres. And the cost of the cord's not very much, so I always put a little bit extra on just in case I change my mind part of the way through the project. So then what you're going to do is you're going to get all the thread, gather up all the threads from all your bobbins. Then you're going to tie an overhand knot in it. And then once you've done that, you can pop that down through the centre of your disc and start putting your bobbins in place. Now the other thing about kumihimo is that it's based on the points of the compass. So for example, this is north, south, east and west. And you'll find that in most patterns they'll refer to the points of the compass. They'll always refer to north, south, east and west. You'll also notice that there's some dots on this disc. So what I'm doing at the moment, starting off with the basic braid, is you're just going to pop your bobbins on either side of the dots in each of the points of the compass. And then we can start braiding. So I'll do a really quick demo on how you actually do braiding, but as I said, for more in-depth view, go and have a look at my introduction to Japanese braiding. So you can see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bobbins, okay? And for this round braid design, you always have the same colour or seed beads on the north and south, and then the contrasting one on the east and west. So the basic moves for the kumihimo is it basically going to go from the bottom to the top and top to the bottom. And then a quarter turn. Now it's up to you whether you choose to turn clockwise or anti-clockwise, but once you decide on which way you're going to go, you need to be committed to stay the course till the end of the project. You can't, if you went backwards and forwards, you wouldn't get that beautiful spiral through your project. You see that I've actually put some arrows here. It's a good idea just to get a texter and pop them on just while you're starting. And then once you get the hang of it, you won't need to do that. So that's what we call one move, 2 parts to one move. And the other thing is you always need to make sure that you stay and you work on the same side of the disc. So when you're going from the bottom to the top, you're always staying on this side of the disc, the west side of the disc. And then from top to bottom, and you've stayed on the east side of the disc. And then we're going to do our quarter turn. So this is the basic technique. You just keep doing this. And then what we do with the seed beads is we start dropping some beads in. So I'll just do a few more turns like this so you can see how it goes, because it's a little easier on this thicker braid because the cord's much finer. So here we go. Top to bottom, quarter turn. Bottom to the top to the bottom, quarter turn. Bottom to the top to the bottom, quarter turn. Bottom to the top to the bottom. Bottom to the top to the bottom. Bottom to the top to the bottom. So I think you've probably all got the hang of that now. Now the other thing is that it's inevitable that you won't get your project finished in one sitting. So a really good idea, so you know where you're up to when you come back to your project, is to do half your move. So go from the bottom to the top and then put it down, and you've got 3 braids. And that way next time when you come back you'll know, okay, this one on the left, the top to the bottom will be my next move, and turn it around. So it's a really good habit to always get into, to sort of just leave those 3 whenever you put the project down, even if you're just stepping out of the room for a minute. That way you remember where you're up to. The other little hint is that one of the other things is you're always pulling your braid over the top of the horizontal braid. So as you can see in this one, this is the horizontal one, and we're going to take this cord over the top and in. And the same with this one. Here's the horizontal one. You're going to go from the top to the bottom over the top of that. You can see this little box shape in here, and that's what tells you, that's what we call the braid structure. And once you can learn to see where the braid structure is, you'll make sure that you don't make any mistakes. So the other little hint too is that because of this spiral braid and design of the braid, if for some reason you end up with mixed colours in the north or south plane, you know you've made a mistake, because you always need to keep the same colour on the bottom and the top and the east and the west. Okay, so we'll put that to one side and we'll talk a bit about beads. Right, so with the beads we need to use what is called Ceylon, which is a bonded nylon cord. Now this cord comes in 3 different weights and thicknesses. So the one we're using today is what we call Tex 210, which is a 0.5 millimetre in diameter cord, and we're using 8/0 seed beads. Now if you used to use finer seed beads like 11/0, for example, let's have a look. This project here, you can see that those beads, when you compare them to this one, those beads are much smaller. So they're what we call an 11/0 seed bead. And these ones in our project are 8/0 seed beads. Okay. So for the 8/0 seed beads, the Tex 210 is fine to use for those. If you're using 11/0 seed beads, that's these ones, then you'll want to use what we call a fine weight cord, which is a Tex 135, and it's 0.4 millimetres. And then if you've got really fine beads, or sometimes the check glass holes can be a little small. For example, this has got some what we call little lentils in it. and that's got a really fine cord, you might need to use a micro cord. And the micro is a Tech 70, and that's 0.1 millimetres. So these are the basic cords, a bonded nylon cord, and that's what you're going to use to thread your beads onto. Just pop these out of the way. So the process is the same. I've got one here that I've already started, because the other thing you need with the beads is you need to decide how many beads you're going to thread onto each cord. So this particular pattern, I've given you the information in your kit. And for this particular bracelet, we're using what we call some magatamas. Oh, just got a little knot cord. Just undo the little knot there. So we're using, as I said, we're using 8 seed beads, and we're using what we call these magatamas. So these magatamas are what we call a directional bead. So that means you can, for this particular pattern, we're just threading them on with no particular pattern. We're just picking them up and threading them on. Because they're directional, you could also pick them up so they all run in the same direction. And this is an example of when they're all going in the one direction. See, they're all going around there. You've picked it up in the same way on each one. Makes it look a bit like a dragon skull. But we're not doing that today. We're just doing as they lay there. That's what we're doing. So the pattern for this is that if you have a look, we've got, again, this is the other thing you'll notice, I've got a thicker disc. That disc that we used here was what we call a 6-inch 10mm disc. And this one is what we call a 6-inch 20mm disc. So it's much thicker. So that actually helps to give you some extra tension on your cord. So you'll notice again we've got the 8 bobbins, but on this one what we've got is on north and south we've got all seed beads, 8 seed beads, and then on east and west we've got a mixture of seed beads and these magatamas. And the pattern and the number that you need to pick up will be in your kit. That information will be there. But it does take a little bit of time to sort of, get your beads out and start threading them on, okay? Oops, where we go? Here we go. Let's untangle this. So I've already pre-threaded those on because it does take a little bit of time. But we'll show you how to do it. Now, one of the easiest ways to thread your beads on is to get what we call a large eye needle. Now, there's a couple of different types in these. So we've got a short and a long, and they're a more robust one. Or this is a nice fine one. If you've got really fine beads with fine holes, this tulip one's excellent. Or there's a shorter version of those. So let's start threading. So the way you open these is you just pop your thumb in between like that and just pop it open like that, okay? And then you get your cord and just pop it through, okay? Straight through the hole like that. Pull it down. So these are a galvanised metallic bead that I'm using here. Toho, I use all Toho seed beads. These are all Toho. And the magatamas are my Yuki. So they're Japanese seed beads, so they're of lovely quality, very even, and consistent in size and shape. So the pattern for this one is, on the all seed bead one, which is the north and south, you're going to pick up 53 8/0 seed beads on each bobbin. And on the ones that have got the mixture, you're going to pick up 8 of these. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, whether you choose to use the longer needle or the shorter one, it's purely personal preference. There's no, there's no right or wrong way of using those. And now we're going to pick up the magatamas. So if you can see, they've got a hole. So the shape of that one's like that. Whereas if you pick it up the other way, it's quite different. So you're going to pick up 37 of these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, perfect. So you can see why I threaded the others on before the class. It does take a little bit of time to put them on. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20. So adding beads just opens up the door to a whole lot of interesting things that you can do. It just takes your kumihimo to the next level. And it looks really complicated, but it's easy. Once you get the technique organised, it's really easy. Relaxing, I sit and do it in front of the TV. Great way to sort of de-stress. Almost there. So you can tell that we need to pick up some seed beads at the beginning and the magatamas in the middle, because when you look at your finished piece, see how it's got seed beads, magatamas and seed beads. So this plain part here is where you've got the 8 seed beads at each end and then this is where we start bringing the magatamas in. So it's pretty logical once you get the hang of it. And as I said, the technique's the same. I'm just going to drop some beads in, and there's a couple of little tips for dropping the beads in that I'll talk about as we move through. So then we pick up the last 8 seed beads. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right, okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get our bobbin. Now, the bobbins that are in your kit are these plain bobbins, which is a push-up open bobbin. And they come in 3 sizes, 45 millimetre, I think it's 65 millimetre, 85 millimetre. But for this project, it's a really good idea if you use what we call weighted bobbins. So you see there's a little weight in there, and then you've got your bobbin, okay? Opens exactly the same way, but it gives some extra tension to you when you're doing it. And it makes it much easier to keep the beads in place. So what we're going to do is we're just going to tie a little loop and do like a bit of a slip up on the end. I've done that, and then just pick up the cord like that. And then we're going to pop that over the bobbin like that and just pull it like that. And then we're just going to wind the cord up. So there's a lot more cord than you need, but as I said, I like to have a little bit more to fiddle around with, because just in case you change your mind part of the way through the project. And so what you're going to do is you're going to wind the cord up, and you're going to make sure that you've got a little bit of cord before your beads start. Good idea not to have these too long, because they become twisted and it makes it more difficult to do. You'll also note that I've got what we call a weight under there. So it's a kumi weight. So that's a light weight, which is usually strong enough for most projects. If for some reason you need to add some more weight, it's got a hook on the end, you can add another one. But that's really good. So between the weight in the centre and the bobbins, it gives you a nice tension for your project. So what we've done is this has got like an alligator clip. You have a look. See, that's the weight. Just open up the clip and then just put it on underneath the knot. Okay. So let's start braiding. So as I said, the technique is the same. It's just that we're using a finer cord. Okay. So, and it's important that when you first start your project and when you finish it off, that you actually do some braiding here without beads, because you need that little bit to finish off so that you can pop it into your end cap, which we'll talk about shortly. So let's start braiding. So we'll just do our bottom to the top, top to the bottom, bottom to the top, top to the bottom. So we've got about 1 centimetre, of braid without beads. But we always want to, it's always a nice idea to come back to your original starting orientation. So that means that you have, you'll start with, I always try and start with the disc upright with the one at the top. So that means that after you've gone round without beads a few times, you'll get back where that is at the top, and then you'll be ready to start dropping some beads in. Okay. Okay, you can hear those my little bobbing around. So that's that. It's can be quite heavy with those bobbins and things on. You notice that once you sort of start doing it. So keep doing this. Down we go. See, I'll keep doing bottom to top, top to bottom, quarter turn, bottom to the top, top to the bottom, quarter turn, bottom to the top, top to the bottom, quarter turn. So that's the basic techniques that we talked about. And if you can have a look at this particular one, you can see the spiral on that round braid? That's what you get when you have the same beads on the north and the south and the east and the west. It's spiral. This is a really good example of it, actually. There's another one. So this is actually using all 8 seed beads, this one. Just seed beads, but all I've done is do them in 2 different colour tones. And that looks entirely different. But the technique's exactly the same as what we've just done. So what we're going to do is I'm going to move over to another one that I've already started, dropping some beads into so that we can see how it goes. And this is probably a little easier to see, this one. Oh, hang on, just probably take my weight off there for a minute. Put it on this one. Right. Whoops. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to pop my weight back on there. Just tidy this up a little bit because, that's, you sort of pick it up and put it down. Sometimes you just got to make sure you go through and just, try and keep your cords shortish. So the same thing again to open, push open like that. So when you're dropping beads in, it's really important that you keep checking as you're moving around the piece to make sure you haven't missed dropping a bead in. Sometimes, particularly when you're first starting off, it's hard to sort of get the beads to sit in place at the very beginning. Got to work a little bit at that to sort of get them to sit in place. But it's like any jewellery project, starting off is always the hardest part. There you go, just that. Right, we'll just try to shorten that one a little bit, and then we're ready to rock and roll. Right, okay. So, here we are again. See, this is this structure, again, that we just talked about before. See the horizontal braids on the top? We want it to go over, so we're going to go from the bottom over to the top. But this time what we're going to do is we're going to drop a bead in. So you're going to get your thumb behind the next bead that's ready to go. Slide it down and pop it down so that it sits in that little gap there between those 2 threads, the east-west on that side. We're still working on the same side of the disc, okay? So we're on the west side of the disc. And then what we're going to do for the next one is we're going to lift this out like this again, thumb behind the bead, and down you go. And there. Quarter turn. I'm doing it clockwise. And then what you're going to do is you're going to pick up this on the east-west orientation. You're going to pick up the top thread at east and the bottom thread at west. And you're going to just get it like that and just give it a tug. Like that. And that sets the bead so that it doesn't pop out. So you need to just make sure that the bead's actually sitting in place and it hasn't popped out, because otherwise, if it pops out, then you end up in your beaded section with a little gap, and you just see the cord and no bead. You can go back later and sort of, bead some bead weaving and thread it in. But if you're a bit of a purist like me, you'll just unpick it. So what you need to do is you'll need to just keep checking. And then if you for some reason you see you've missed a bead or it hasn't sat in position, then all you need to do is just backtrack. So that means you go backwards, repeat the steps to come back up like that. And then that one. remove that back, and just so on and so forth until you get back to where the mistake was. Okay, but we haven't got one of those, so we're just going to keep going. So we're lifting it up from the bottom, sliding the magatama down underneath this, in this gap, so it sits in that gap. See how it sits in that gap? Then over to the top, then top, slide the bead down. So for this one, it's a good idea to get your thumbnail and just pull it down like that, and that helps it to sit into that little gap there. See, and then down. Right. And then remember what we said? We said that we were a little weight's fallen off here. We said that we were going to pick up the top thread and the bottom thread and just tighten them like that. And what you call locking the bead in place. And I'll show you another little tip in a minute. So in the next one, we're going to pop the seed bead underneath like that. See how it's sitting in the gap? And then up to the top. And slide that bead down again. Pull this down with your thumb. And then just underneath there like that. And like that. Quarter turn. And here we go. Picked up the top, as we said, and the bottom, as we said, and locked it in place. So keep moving around the disc like that. And see, this is, you see how you can see the structure in there, that openness? If you look carefully, if for some reason a bead has popped out and it's not sitting, you'll usually be able to see it. Down, you'll be able to see a little gap. That's another sort of hint that you might have missed one. So we're going to keep on doing that until we get all the way round our piece. And then what we're going to do is we're going to braid without beads for another centimetre and a half. Okay, so this is a really good one to see the contrast. So we've got these dusty sort of mushroom colour beads, and then we've got these bright magatamas. So you can see the spiral working its way through. Okay. So here, make sure there's no seed beads. You should have used all your beads up, unless for some reason it doesn't look quite right. Sometimes you might end up not using the last bead on one of the bobbins because it just sits better when it's finished at the ends. So that you've got this nice sort of, they're all sort of huddled together. You can see that on that one. So then what we're going to do is take the other ones off, and we're going to tie a knot with those. Pull them through at the end. Like that. And then what you'll do is just cut a bit of a tail. So you get your piece here and just cut a tail. And just use your bobbins over to one side. So you end up then with what we call this, a knot at each end. Okay. So what we're going to do is, before you can actually start gluing, you need to actually tidy up your ends. So one of the things we're going to do is you're going to get a needle and thread, and we're actually going to bind. So in your kit, there was some what we call Nemo, which is this cord here. You're going to thread your needle with the cord and just tie a knot in the end to finish it off. And then what you'll do is you'll pop your needle in like this. Actually, what we'll do is just use this one as an example. Let's use this thread so that you can see what we're doing. So this is just a Nemo, which is just a nylon cord. Just thread the needle. Always a challenge. Oh dear, there we go. There it is. There we go. Through like that. And just the smallest piece like that. And there. And just put a knot in the end. end cord, just tie a knot. Doesn't matter how you do the knot in the end, whatever system you have. Wrapped around a few times like that. Do that. Knot in the end, so you want a knot so that it stays in place. So this is what we call binding the ends, okay? So then you're going to get your cord, this, you're going to pop down here. And then what we're going to do is bind the ends. So you're going to pick up your cord. And what you're going to do is you're going to put it through here close to the right next to the seed beads here. Hopefully you can see that. Just pull it through like that. Then you're going to wrap it around about 6 or 8 times. Just make sure it's nice and, oops, it's a bit messy, isn't it? Let's just slowly do it round, so it's bound nice and neatly. Just pull it down, push it down, and then just do a little knot to finish, because the whole idea is you want to stop this cord once you cut it, because you're going to cut it in the middle, from unravelling. So you need to bind it in 2 spots, okay? So I've got this spot here. Cut that off, like that. And then what you do is you'll do another braid about, a centimetre apart. You can see how I've already done this one on this end to save some time. See how I've done that? So what we're going to do is we're going to cut in the middle here. So hopefully you can see that. We're going to cut in the middle, and then we're going to glue our end caps on. So these are what we call end caps. So you can see on here that there's cement, they're glued on here. That's an antique silver finish on those ones. What we call a bullet shape. And this one's, I'm just going to do the plain silver plate. Oh, oops. Silver plate on that. Thank you. So now we're going to start our gluing. So in your kit, you've got some glue, a little tube of glue, E6000 glue. It's a specialist jewellery glue. You can also use a 2-part epoxy. I tend to use a 2-part epoxy because I sell my finished pieces, and this gives me a little bit of extra security, I think. So now what you're going to do is, now a little trick I've got is that you can either sort of possibly get a block of foam and put some splits in it so that you can pop your end cap in, or you can, depending on the size of your, if you've got a nice big sort of, like these metallic, these sort of end caps, you can pop that in there and it'll hold nice and still. So you can see that like that. And you can pop your glue in, it just makes it easier to glue, but so that you can see it, we won't do that today. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this nice pair of scissors, we're going to cut this in half in the centre there. And then we're going to get our end cap. And then we're going to have our highly technical toothpick tools. Excellent for this sort of work. So yes, there'll be some of those in your kit. So you use one to sort of put the glue on the end, and one to actually help poke the, push the braid into the end cap. Just get rid of that. Right, so we've got that glue. I'm going to pop that inside like that, and just run that, and put some on the inside of the finding, and try not to get it on the edges. If you do, for whatever reason, just some isopropyl alcohol, or alcohol, little wipes that you can get from the chemist, will do the job. So then what we're going to do is we've done that, and then we're going to get some glue, and we're going to pop some glue around the end of your braid as well. So that also helps to stop it from unravelling. Like that. And then what we're going to do is get our end cap. Just put the cap on the glue. get our end cap. And then we're going to pop this end into the cap like this. I'm going to push it right up towards the seed beads. Now look, it's up to you whether you include some of the seed beads in it or if you just put it up, snug it up next to it. It's purely personal choice. No, neither option is right or wrong, but you just pop it in like that. And then it's usually a good idea to sort of clamp this with something and so that you can use gravity. The cap will fall down onto the end of your braid. Now this, you need to just sort of hold it there for a few minutes just to make sure it's set, but it doesn't cure for 24 hours, so you can't wear your piece for 24 hours. You've got to allow the glue to cure. Okay, so we'll just recap. We've talked about the technique and what kumihimo is, and we talked about the threads. You know, remember we said this is called seal-on. It's a nylon thread. And then we talked about the large eye needles to thread your beads with. And then we talked about these special bobbins. Oh, oops, that one's fixed. There's my spare one. Do you have a spare one? Anyway, it's a weighted bobbin. We talked about that. And we also talked about having a weight in the centre to hold it nice and firm. So once this is all glued and in place, then what you're going to get in the kit as well, you've got your little, you get a toggle and some what we call jump rings. So that's this. So I'll just, for those of you who've never used them before, I'll just quickly show you how to open the jump rings. So you'll probably get oval jump rings. These are oval ones in your kit. What you do with this is you're going to pop your pliers, it's chain nose pliers. Oh, more thumbs tonight. There it is. Yep, on either side like that. And then you should never open jump rings like that, because once you do that, they lose their spring. They're never the same again. To open a jump ring, you go in opposite, forward and back. So you're just going to open it like that till you've got a gap. See that? And then what you're going to do is then thread it through your end cap, through the hole in your end cap, like this. Like that. Like that. Right, there we go. And then you're going to get your toggle. Over there. Sorry, it's just out of my reach. And get your toggle. There's two bits to the toggle. There's the round part and the bar. Okay. So then you're going to just put your toggle through like that, and then you're going to close your jump ring. Okay. That, thread it through like that, and then you're going to close your jump ring, and when you close it you'll hear a little click. It'll spring into place. When you hear the click and the spring, you know that it's closed. Then what you can do is just to reinforce it, just pop your pliers over the join like that and give it a squeeze. Okay, and then you'll end up with the toggle on the end like that.